Hello, everybody in Twitterland and on YouTube, and welcome to Fantasy NBA Today podcast, the podcast, a sports ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Brewski, and for the first time in a little bit here, Mark Camaro, our Dynasty expert here at Sports Ethos. I don't know why I can't talk this morning. And today we're going to jump off of the season-long fantasy train, and we'll stay on it a little bit, but we're going to get into some Dynasty coverage because I know a lot of folks are playing Dynasty these days. It really is one of the most pure forms of fantasy sports that there is. I love it. I've been playing more and more fantasy leagues. Just got into Rick Kamla's Cam Dynasty League, and that dude, he loves his fantasy basketball. He's pushing me hard in that league. And we're going to cover all sorts of great topics, and they will dovetail with season-long fantasy drafts. So you guys can buckle up and get into a great show here. And before we do that, let's quickly shout out our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all things football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of our over 150 slots. Head to the website today to get into the action. BetOnline. The game starts here. All right, Mark, how the hell are you, sir?
I am good. Actually preseason basketball happening. Granted, it's 11 a.m. It's overseas. Those games tend to be, we'll just say interesting and probably not super informative, but it is some form of basketball. And that means basketball is close. It's close. It's so close.
I hadn't had my coffee this morning and the basketball was on. Now I don't need my coffee. It's exciting. And actually, I'm already getting details, intel watching these Boston Celtics go and Denver as well. There's a lot of interesting stuff just looking at people. Looking at Jamal Murray. Is he overweight? Is he not overweight? What is he? I'm gonna go with a little bit overweight. How are things for you, Mark? Like Dynasty coverage wise, like what before we jump into the actual board here and talk about what we plan on talking about, like what's been some of the top things on your mind heading into this Dynasty season? Have you been doing drafts? Like what's going on?
Yeah, we're actually running a mock draft here, Dynasty mock. So once that's finished, we'll have a little write up on that. And otherwise, it's kind of just monitoring injuries and maybe if there's any news about, oh, this guy starting. I, and then really the rest of the training camp news, I just ignore. I don't care if players gain muscle. I don't care if this player is really running well in scrimmages. There was a Reed Shepard like sequence that was highlighted from Rocket scrimmage. And yeah, I mean, did it look nice? Sure. Is it also a scrimmage setting for like 30, 45 seconds that's not game time? Also, yes. As a Rockets fan, it's fun to see. One of my friends was like, sent me the clip and was like, I'm all in on Reed Shepard now. I am in, and sent me the little rocket emoji. And I was just like, okay, let's take a bit of a breath here. Let's not get too stoked up. But at this point, I'm just ready for the season to start, see how rotations shake up, and see if some things that I anticipate happening do happen, or am I going to get surprised?
How mad are you that I had the first overall pick in the Cam Dynasty for Rick Kamla's Dynasty League. So I just got into the league. It handed me a crap team. I'm just kidding. There's decent players on this team. But I drafted Alexander Sarr, number 1 overall, instead of your boy Reed Shepard. How big of a mistake did I make?
I don't think it's a huge mistake, if even a mistake, just because this draft is kind of, you could go a lot of different ways in interpreting the players. I personally do have Reed Shepard 1, but it's a little bit lumped at the top. And I do think Sarr maybe has that more like defense plus offensive upside. Not that Shepard doesn't have that. He definitely does. Impressive stock rates in college. That's been talked about by myself multiples of times. But Sarr could have a rough beginning. That's what I
That
would
was
caution
part of
Dynasty
the
managers on.
rationale for me drafting because I'm not competing this year. I want Cooper Flag next year. So I got a lot of work to do to tank this team into the ground. There are specific rules in this league that you have to play live bodies. I got to get with Rick and understand how much can I tank? Like, can I play a guy that plays 10 minutes a game? What are the rules here, Rick? I need to know. Today we're going to be talking about all sorts of good stuff. We got Karl-Anthony Towns, Zach Edey, Trey Murphy, Devin Vassell. I got a crap team with Luka Doncic. Andre, I got a crap team with Luca on it. Andre wants everybody to know that Luca is on my team, so it's not that bad. We're going to talk who else? Mitchell Robinson, Asar Thompson. I mean, these are really like I'm excited to talk about these guys from the dynasty perspective, but also just in reality, or not in reality, season long, because these are just big names. I love it. So let's get right to it here. Let's start with Mitchell Robinson. Another setback. Like, where are you with projecting Mitchell Robinson for folks going forward? I mean, he's not that old, right? But it feels like maybe he's got the Tibbs minutes on him. Are you completely turning your back on him, or are you kind of giving some credence towards, hey, it can't be this bad. This is like buy the dip, so to speak.
So it's funny you say he's not that old because he's not. I think I want to say 26. That's off the top
Yeah.
of my head there. But I mean, his body is certainly aging like it could be pretty old. And that's more the issue. I mean, we'll talk about the Karl Anthony Towns trade later in that situation. But with Robinson himself, I mean, he can play with Towns. I'm not really worried about that. They don't have great center options there. That's not the concern. It's the injuries and actually sitting in the court. And he's going to be out. Reports say, I think it's optimistically December, but probably that's going to mean January or February. Then he's going to need some ramp up period, like we saw last season. Probably a lost season for him in season long. And then in Dynasty, is he just going to be someone who's managed? Is he going to get injured further? These injuries have been really pretty much all the ankle or the foot or the leg. And that's one that tends to build and really can wear down a player. And that's where my concern lies. So you asked, do you buy the dip? I almost sell the dip. I mean, don't sell at a crazy price. I mean, don't sell them for just like maybe a second round pick if you're in a 30 team or something. That's too much selling the dip. But you can sell low on players. You can say I don't think his value is really going to recover, and then just take what you can get and be okay with it. And if there's not something out there, then I think you have to do the old tried and true hope and pray and see what happens. That's where I'm at
I
with
think
Mitchell
selling a
Robinson.
player low is the hardest thing to do. And it's sometimes it's the smartest thing to do, and oftentimes it's the smartest thing to do because it's the hardest thing to do. And a lot of people just kind of, I'll wait and see if he bounces back. I'll let him sit on my roster until he bounces back. And then when it's like completely clear the player's done, you see him get dropped. And you might have gotten something for him. How much forward looking do you do with somebody like Mitchell Robinson? It's like, okay, so Cat's in, they spent a lot to get him. He's going to get paid a lot. There's no chance that Mitchell Robinson really has a future in New York other than maybe like, say, 16 minutes a game or something, 18 minutes a game. What about the prospect of him getting moved? How much does that factor into your analysis?
It factors in a little bit, but does he get moved to a team that's trying to look for a starting center? Does he get moved to a team just as salary ballast and then, well, he's still a backup, so it doesn't change? Does he get traded as kind of maybe a salary dump when the Knicks cap situation gets worse? They actually have done a good job where I think it's 26, 27 season, I think, when they get to the second apron and then maybe they have those concerns. So the Knicks cap people have been geniuses there in that regard. But I mean,
That's a
sometimes
funny
trades
thing
are,
to say, right?
yeah, I know it's 5 years ago. If you said that, you'd be a loony for saying that. It's actually wild the change the front office has made since
Mhm.
Leon Rose. It was what, 2019, 2020.
Yeah, about
But
then. Even that was kind of eye popping because like you're gonna go work for Dolan, huh? Okay, we'll see
and
how
then
that works. And
and the
it's
whole
New York,
CAA
but
connections, yeah, but it's worked out. Props to
extraordinarily
them.
well.
It's worked out.
Yeah.
But I mean, with Mitchell Robinson and the trade, yeah, maybe he gets traded somewhere that's good, but maybe he just gets traded and it's not good. So some trades you can see coming, you can see predicting, but others it's hard to factor in, and it's a little more nebulous. And if it's that nebulous, I'm not gonna go one way or the other in terms of rising or lowering a player.
Yeah, well, let's go. We wanted to just whet the appetite with a little Mitchell Robinson talk. We got the big names coming up now. We got Asar Thompson. Okay, so this news is just kind of like it's almost, I don't know if it's news, but it feels like it's news. Detroit Pistons forward Asar Thompson out for start of training camp as a headline, right? That doesn't sound good. You had all summer to be ready. This is for blood clots, of course, which now you've got to really I know there's a lot of people who don't like it when we play like, Twitter doctor or whatever, but you kind of got to be a Twitter doctor with this stuff and try to figure out, is this real? Is this in terms of him being out for a long time, or is this just them being cautious? What's your read on this situation, and how are you just handling Asar, the upside, Thompson, just in general?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be clear and upfront. With injuries and minor setbacks, it's more just a footnote. It's not necessarily the crux. So, quick aside or quick summary up top. I don't think Thompson's like a huge faller or anything, but it's something I'm monitoring and keeping my eye on. They have a new front office there. It's not the one that drafted Alsair Thompson. They drafted Ron Holland, who kind of has similar issues as Thompson, both really impressive athletically. I think have pretty good tenacity, pretty good attacks at the rim, but struggle with shooting. And that's really tough, especially when your core player looks to be Cade Cunningham. And with his lack of drive and athleticism, you probably want some shooting around him. I don't, I mean, if you're trying to build a coherent lineup right now, I don't see how you can play Alsair Thompson and Ron Holland together. But both these players need minutes. So do they just compete? Do they cannibalize each other just in terms of opportunity? And you factor in, are they going to take it easy with Alsair Thompson, give him some space or time just to make sure this situation's all settled out? I feel like that's going to be the case. I mean, regardless of basketball, just in terms of life health, I think that seems to be the best course of action. I don't want to speculate too much. I'm not even a Twitter doctor, let alone a doctor, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
and
something to monitor.
and we don't even really know kind of the nature of it is another thing. So blood clots have been pretty bad in the past. For those who haven't followed kind of, Chris Bosh and just the the finality of them, the potential that there's just like an end of a career. It's definitely there. I don't think people are talking like that about Asar right now, but it's certainly concerning. And we'll see how this progresses. I would think we probably have another week or two before the next step of the news. It's either going to be he's going to be ready for the start of the season, or it's going to be he's not. And the minute it goes towards he's not, his fantasy stock is going to go way down. Are you buying the dip there?
That's one where it's funny. I talked about this earlier a couple months ago with buy sells. If everyone's like saying a player's a buy, they're not a
Hard to
buy.
buy.
They're
Yeah.
not a buy. Or if everyone's saying a sell, well, then no one wants to buy. They're not a sell. So it's relative buys and sells. I'm fine, trading for or away Alsair Thompson if it's a player that makes sense or you're getting similar upside because Thompson still has upside. I don't think he has as much on ball juice as we all originally thought, but he definitely still has this rebounding defensive upside, and that is valuable in fantasy. But you have to balance that out with what you're receiving or what you're giving up. So it's I would say a relative buy. I'm definitely not out on him, and he's someone I'm willing to be patient with. If you roster him at this point, I just be patient. You have to see how the situation I think shakes out first, unless you get overwhelmed.
The relative buy, I love that concept. I feel like there's an entire podcast with that concept because, yeah, everybody says buy. Okay, where's the margin? Sell, same thing. Where's the margin? But these players, that it feels like there's maybe a wider range of outcomes, so there's a little bit more room to get in there and grab that profit. Another note on Asar, just the small basketball clips that I've seen of him in this last, say, 3 months, looks pretty damn good. Like he's his dribbling skills in particular look like he's ready to handle at a pretty high level. But all of the concerns of Detroit and Ron Holland and everything that's going on there, and bringing in 3 veterans that got to have some role there. How are they working with ownership? What are they doing? Are they trying to win? Are they trying to lose? What's going on? It feels like they need to stop losing, just for franchise reasons, to get the stench out of the room. A lot of things going on in the Detroit. Let's go to Trey Murphy. I think a lot of people are excited about Trey Murphy because he kind of seems like an easy sleeper. And, you're kind of just thinking they got to get rid of Brandon Ingram, right? Right. And there comes the injury report. How concerned are you with Trey Murphy's latest injury, are you going to drop him in any sort of ranks? Say season long, because I think in Dynasty this doesn't affect him at all, right?
No, no. I mean, the report was right hamstring, I think reevaluated or expected back in 3 weeks. So add on another 2 weeks there. So 5 weeks. Misses maybe the first 2 weeks of the season max. That's not, I don't care about that for Dynasty, really.
Does that does that like possibly give a potential for a slow start? And therefore you might tell folks like, hey, when this happens, and it will, this is the time to jump on board. Do you ever think like that and kind of reposition recommendations like that?
So yeah, that's exactly why he's in this faller section because probably, I very much doubt I drop him, but I do expect maybe a slower start, probably lower minutes than we expect early on, just with the crowded rotation. And if he's coming back from the hamstring and trying to bed in with the team during the regular season, it's going to take some time. He may not be fully ready yet. So I remember last season it was in the premium Discord, players or other managers kept asking and asking, what do we do with Trey Murphy? What do we do with Trey Murphy? It's like, be patient, hold. And Herb Jones too. What do we do? Just, you know what he's going to be. Be patient. You'll get some swings in defensive stats. Just hold, and you'll be fine season long. And that's going to be the case again, I think, with Trey Murphy the third here. Ride out those first couple weeks. Season long, yeah, that's maybe someone drop just maybe a slight
A
tier,
little
maybe half
tad,
tier.
little
A tad.
tad.
Yes, a tad. Yes, that is a technical term. A tad. But for Dynasty, I mean, just anticipate a slow start, be okay with it. And then, yeah, maybe there's an opportunity if a manager is disappointed with him. I'd be okay buying there for sure. That's where I would buy a potential perception dip.
I'm thanking you right now, Mark, because you're letting listeners know that this is a Dynasty Fallers grouping of players we're discussing. I didn't do that. I just started talking, and I didn't even let you know that we're going to talk about guys that are possibly falling. Murphy, though, the combo of athleticism and the sweet shooting and the free throw and just all that. I mean, it just everything's clicking for him in a fantasy setting, and I can't wait for him to get cut loose if that happens. I cannot wait. And even Herb Jones, like these are great like basketball players in general, much better than folks know. And I get real excited talking about them. Let's get to Devin Vassell. This one I think hits dynasty leagues way harder. And what are you doing here? Like, is he still the guy to you, or did this most recent thing did that knock folks back a little bit?
I think it's concerning, and I think it's what's the difference between a footnote and like a sentence? A
Mm.
major footnote, a bolded footnote. I don't know, but we said Trey Murphy the third and Altair Thompson. That's more monitor situations. I think Devin Vassell, he's supposed to be reevaluated with the foot injury in early November. That's a little bit more of alarm bells. That's, I guess, maybe DEFCON level. That's like DEFCON 2, I guess. That's DEFCON seems too harsh. Or alarm level 2, whatever. I think the point's made there. Um, but yeah, I mean, the foot injury, that's not great. He's had some other, I mean, maybe there were
The
still,
foot leads to the knee leads to the foot.
yeah, but he's had some other end of season surgeries before, which means, yes, it was towards the end of the season. You could say tanking, rebuilding. But if you have a surgery, that's usually pretty legit. I don't think players just get surgeries randomly for tank. That does not
This will
happen.
help lay it on thick. They'll never know we're doing it.
Yeah, right. Like I remember this random side note, but like say Gildas Alexander when he sat out that one Thunder season, I think this 3 seasons ago at this point, people were like, OKC's blatantly tanking. And it's like, this guy's getting surgery and not going to play for his national team. I'm pretty sure he's maybe milking it a little bit, but I'm pretty sure he's legitimately injured. The players just don't do that unless there's a decent, good reason for it. So, but in this case with Vassell, going back to him, again, it's a bit of monitor. It's probably maybe means a little more opportunity for Stephon Castle, maybe some other players early in Dynasty. If it becomes something that lingers and looks to be, I don't want to say chronic, but could just linger and then maybe sap some of that athleticism and burst, which he doesn't really have a lot of. He has some, but if it drains that a little more, okay, that's when I'll be a little bit more concerned long term. It may be boring to say you have to wait and see how this plays out. But I mean, injuries affect literally every player across the league. And sometimes you have to just wait and see how the player actually responds to their recovery and how they play back.
That was my follow-up question is kind of like, where do you sit on getting ahead in front of this or waiting and being patient? It sounds like with this particular injury, with this particular player, you're leaning more toward be a little bit more patient, which to me says that there's opportunity. Because I think most people hear injury and they go, okay, I got to get off this. And then they're out there making their offers, or at least thinking about making offers, maybe not selling low. But again, the problem here is that everybody wants to either sell or buy at certain times. But in this case, you're like, no, wait, hold on to your asset. Or how would you say to be as aggressive as to go try to get him while this news is out there?
Again, it kind of harkens back to the relative buy and sells. I'm going to plug the pun intended pod here. I had a pod on that a couple months ago because it really irks me, honestly, when I see buy and sell because there's this context that's needed. And I also hate giving like non answers or, well, here's the considerations, but I like giving people tools to make decisions rather than give them the straight answer. And so with the sell, it's, well, how comfortable are you with this potential injury risk? How comfortable do you just view him as a player? How do you think he's going to recover? Do you think this is going to have to be managed more long term? I don't think it's going to be any long term thing personally, but that could change in 2 months. Maybe we see him, struggle when he comes back. He just doesn't look up to snuff, doesn't look up to speed. It looks like his ankle is still bothering him. But so, short answer is a little bit of context going to depend on your risk level as a manager for injury in terms of dynasty. And if you can stomach that, if you're okay with that, or if you're okay trying to aim for that upside. I tend to be a manager who probably plays it safer than I should. I'm trying to be better about taking those risks. So I'm personally probably not going too hard on buying them to sell, but there is an opportunity if you're okay accepting that risk.
There's a game within the game. It's like reading the analyst themselves, and I think people that watch a lot of different analysts, they kind of figure out, okay, this is your style, this is your style. I'm sure people are kind of laughing because like my style is just go full bore and just take all the risks that you could ever take and like throw caution to the wind. And I'm gonna have like 3 big misses and 5 big hits, and just kind of approaching it that way. And then so it's like people will start to read you. And in your case, they're gonna say, okay, he doesn't take as many risks. He's given us the tools to kind of figure it out. But then he just said that one little thing. And I think I know what Mark Camaro thinks. And I'm gonna go take that play based on what Mark Camaro thinks. Okay. All right. That's enough of the fallers. We're gonna jump into the risers. But before we do that, ice pick in your eye trivia right now. Okay, it's ice pick in your eye trivia time. Deep breaths, deep breaths. This stuff is stressful. The questions are great. Andre Lemus, Lemouche. I love you, Andre. He has the best questions in trivia history. It's funny, we do this and we bring all these people around the league on. And the thing they keep coming back to us, they're like, man, I loved ice pick in your eye trivia. Can I come on and do that again? It's because of the questions. All right, so the questions in. Mark, you get to go first here. Doc, wherever you are sitting there, I'm coming for you, man. I think I'm -1 behind you. I'm coming for you. Who had the most efficient NBA shooting season of all time? You need to guess the player that ranks first for field goal percentage and the player that ranks first for true shooting percentage. Pardon me. We need to know the players' names, not whether they are first in field goal percentage or true shooting. If you're tied, one guess one guess is field goal and the other guess is true shooting. The one who guessed the highest ranked player and the answer first outside of number 1 wins. I guess we're just naming players here. I don't know why that threw me off so much.
Yeah.
I need
So
more coffee.
are we naming one player for the field goal percentage and one player for true shooting, or is it the same player? Same
It
player?
might be. I think it might be one player has both, but it might be. Yeah, I think it's one player's got to have both of these. If it's the most efficient NBA shooting season of all time, Andre says no. Okay, we're just naming players. We're naming players.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I've listened along and I love the trivia segments, and but I'm terrified if I have to answer, so we'll just go for it.
Me too.
I
Especially
want.
this one. I don't even know the rules of this one. What are we going for?
I'm pretty sure on the
Oh,
field goal percentage, I want, or I guess I think pretty sure he qualified. I want to say it's Mitchell Robinson.
well, if it's a field goal percentage, yeah, it might be. That might be right, but oh, like of all time, Mitchell Robinson? He was the guy?
I think it was DeAndre Jordan before him.
Wow. I was thinking if it wasn't him, it was either like Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford. Like it's crazy that those two centers on the same team have like something like 70% shooting. Okay, so you got the first one. So now I got to go true shooting. All right. True shooting, that's got to be Stephen Curry. Give it to me, Stephen Curry. Did we just run the table? Oh, we didn't run the table. Oh, crap.
Well,
All right,
Curry
Mark?
was my guess, so
Yeah, like how couldn't it be him?
I would have thought that. I mean, that obviously that one MVP season. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, the tricky thing here is free throws and the free throw
He
volume.
yeah. Well,
But
that would be Steph anyway, but like
yeah, I would still think Steph there. Oh gosh, good field goal. I mean, I don't think it's Jokic, but I'm blanking,
I wonder
so
if so
we'll
many
say Jokic.
three-pointers taken for yeah, that's probably the one. Curry is 6th of all time, says Andre.
Yeah,
Not Nikola Jokic. I wonder if taking so many threes really worked against him. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go Kevin Durant, but I don't think it's right. Nothing. Nothing. Damn it.
man, I'm blank. I'm trying to think of just historical players. I can't say my historical database is as good. I mean, I don't think it'd be someone like CP3 or someone.
Oh, wait a second. Look at Andre. He
Well,
says there's
maybe
a
I'll
tip.
maybe I'll wait.
There's a tip. These tips are always just great. Like they're never helpful. Well, I shouldn't say never. Don't overthink the quality of the player. Luke
I don't think.
Babbitt.
Yeah, yeah. Were we thinking bad players here? I thought we were thinking of pretty quality players.
No, we're overthinking the quality of players is what we're doing.
Not LeBron James. All right, you know what? I'm gonna go that it's a trick question. It's Mitchell Robinson again. It's
That is
not
a
with the free throws.
great. Oh, I hate this game. I hate it. I hate it so much that I love it. Okay. Do I get a tip or do I got to work off of that tip right
I
there?
think you got a tip.
I think so.
It was
But
the same tip.
yeah, it ain't good tip. Okay. Not overthinking the quality of the player. Who the hell would have done that? I'll go if I can't overthink the quality of the player. That tip that just threw me so far off the track, Andre. I'm now thinking like, well, who was like the 150th ranked player one season in fantasy leagues that just had a hell of a season? I don't know. Well, like why? Yeah, the clock's on. I get it. Let's go. Clay Thompson. Just somebody shoot me. Eh. Mark, I hope you get this. I have no shot. No shot. Another tips in, not a guard.
Well, that's good because I was gonna say James Harden just on the free throw volume. That is not an answer, Andre. That was just
Yeah, you do have to note
postulating.
that. Yeah, you do have to note that with this guy. He's quick over there. Especially with that countdown on people named me. It didn't give you the countdown.
I mean, maybe I was gonna say maybe it's players in the show. Now, go Towns then.
Sometimes he does that. This is the thing. He's always playing head games with us, that Andre. Working hard over there.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah, nope.
Did he buzz you before you even said it?
No, I said Towns earlier.
Oh,
I
did
just
you?
was
Okay.
making sure he heard.
All right. Here comes a tip. Maybe this is going to help. This player is bad at free throws. He's bad at free throws. That's not great. He's bad at free throws. And he hits the occasional three. Who would that be? Bad at free throws. Is it Zion? No, it can't be Zion. I'll say Zion, just to get some more tips. Give us some more tips, Andre. I take Zion. Thank you very much. I take Luke Babbitt.
Pedro's there in the comments. Who's also on our Dynasty division here, telling us we have amazing ability to break answers. I mean, that's why we're not on top of this list of true shooting.
That is exactly doesn't hit the occasional three. Okay.
DeAndre Jordan then.
Yeah.
He was up there for field goal.
Yeah, nothing, huh? Deep sigh.
Oh no.
Honestly, can I curl into a ball on the ground? DeAndre Jordan, number 16. It's like, I wonder if I said the right answer. I'll go Derek Lively. That makes no sense, but yeah, it makes zero sense, but no. Mark, you got anything you can save us with? You got any rabbits to pull out of your hat?
I don't understand this tip.
He's directing me to read this. Okay, apparently I'll read anything you put on the teleprompter. He lost his virginity when he got his first 3-pointer.
There's a lot of thoughts going through my head, and I don't think any of them help.
Like, how is that even possible? Like, like they couldn't show the game. That would be just. Andre is extraordinarily happy about this. And
I mean,
I think I get it though. I think I get it. Is it who's up?
I'm up. I mean,
You're up?
Joel Embiid has that one celebration. So whatever, it's a BMX, whatever.
So the quote is in
Joel Embiid.
I feel like I lost my virginity. It's got to be somebody who made like 1-3. Like, who made 1-3? Tonight, I feel like I lost my virginity. Virgins, dial up the show. Help us here.
I don't know if this, Andre, what direction are you leading us to?
A great one. An awesome one. Who hit the damn three? Somebody hit a damn three, and then that was their quote. I swear to God, I think I got it, but it's just like stuck in there somewhere. It's who hit the damn three? Ben Simmons. I got to get Ben Simmons into an answer today. No. Tips in. He used to be a teammate with someone we will talk about today. That's now we're working. Okay, we're gonna go to some rundown action that folks can't see.
Yeah, it's not like we're talking about 10 to 12 players here that have been around the league and played with plenty of players. All right, yeah. The comments are saying...
I approve of you giving it to Andre. This is messed up.
The comments are saying Giannis, and yeah, we'll go Giannis. I'll trust the comments here. Trust the audience.
The wisdom of crowds is false.
Y'all lied to me.
It's their fault. Tip, it's a center.
Cool.
Is it the late, great Dikembe Mutombo? Rest in peace, Mr. Mutombo. Thank you for your humanitarian aid, and I'm being very serious with that. Tip is in. Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, is it okay? Well, Rudy Gobert?
Oh, God. So dejected.
That's
Mark, the
surprising to
big
me.
winner. 2-0. I guess you get to, we'll fly across the country and get a beer with you, sir. You still in Houston? Are you Houston?
Oh yeah, yep, Houston.
Okay.
We
That's
got
about
some good local
halfway.
breweries here.
Yeah. That's halfway between California and Atlanta. What a performance, says the Sports Ethos account. What a performance. Encore, Burley Oz. Encore. None of you know what that means. I read that
mean,
book to my kid. None of you know what that means.
If this is what was that 2 for 16 performance? All right, this is like what Dion Waiters saying. If I take 30 shots but make 9, it's good. Like, this is not a good performance. I don't want this on my record.
Oh, yeah. Well, great Dion Waiters reference. Shout out Dion Waiters. I hope you're finally not high anymore after those gummies from the plane. Okay. Let's talk Dynasty Risers. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, this couldn't have worked out much better for him, right? I mean, he lands with the coach that used to coach him. He lands on a good team. Probably enough shots to go around. How did you feel about the Karl Anthony Towns trade?
Are you asking me from fantasy or
I
from real
loaded
life?
that up. You could talk about all things.
Quick and dirty, and I'll talk real life because I am a little impassioned about this take, is that I think it was great for the Knicks, horrible for the Wolves. I know I've seen, but the increased cap flexibility. Actually get on the pathways and see what flexibility actually exists. It's very nebulous. If Randall leaves, you lose that salary slot. Okay, you can have more space to sign Reed and Alexander Walker. Then you're kind of in a similar situation where you can't add more talent. I don't think Randall is close to Towns in terms of shooting. And I do understand the Knicks lost depth. You also got a clearly talented player that can help you with the shooting. You lost in DiVincenzo. And yes, there are playoff issues. Those were already there earlier. You already had an Embiid defensive issue that you can guard him most likely. You already probably had an issue against the Celtics there. And I think you raised your ceiling and you helped that offense just really take a jump up. So that's my
doesn't
quick
this
take
come
there.
down to whether Karl Anthony Towns? It was funny that like right out the chute, the New York Post, Stephen Bondy, great writer. I've been following him for like 20 years. So when he writes this, it gets my attention. He says that the soft label is just not appropriate. It just feels like if hit the playoff issues, I like the way you put that, the playoff issues. I mean, you can't be in the playoffs and be fouling 80 feet from the bucket, and just being like, what? I didn't foul him. And it's like, you clubbed him over the head. You didn't know that you clubbed him over the head, Karl? Like, in terms of high leverage playoff games, that I think might be the reason people are going in on him for toughness. But like, isn't that the thing? Like, if he can be tough, that's an amazing situation for New York. You literally just got the shooter you needed, the defense or the center that you needed on offense. You got enough defense around to kind of, deal with the issues that Karl might have. But by the way, Karl's kind of good against these big centers that he comes up against. It's a weird thing. It's like, he fouls a ton, but when you have a Jokic, it's like, hey, Karl's probably the best guy in the league or one of the best guys in the league on a guy like Jokic. So that works out well.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, for Dynasty, hey, if Towns is playing center, you'll probably just get more boards. You'll probably maybe get defensive stats. I'm not as sure about that, just with Towns' injuries and just, I guess, Towns. He's not necessarily always been a huge defensive stats guy. But, I mean, Gobert's a very strong rebounder, gobbling up boards here in Minnesota. Who's there in New York to gobble up boards? McCall Bridges isn't necessarily a great rebounder. OG Anunoby isn't. I mean, Josh Hart is, but that's more kind of slashing, jumping in there, going wild in there for boards, more on the offensive glass. In terms of defensive rebounding, that's probably going to be Towns. And
what about
that's
the
what's
coach fit?
fallen.
Yeah. What about the coach fit? Like, do you think that people should be ascribing additional benefit to him because of theoretic like 34, 35 minutes? Or that he's going to play all 82 games like he was earlier in his career because it's Tibbs and people go crazy for Tibbs?
That's where it could go either way, just because I don't know if he's really a classic Tibbs player. He's not. I don't think Towns is a. He's not a good rim protection center. He's not a good drop coverage. He's not your traditional rim runner as much. And yeah, you can say you used to coach him. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
That is it.
Reports, obviously, reports now are like, oh yeah, they've cleared the air. I mean, obviously that's going to be written. That's could be PR talk, but I think it's fine. They obviously have a previous relationship, whatever it is, but I'm sure they wouldn't have done this trade with at least saying, "Hey, we're bringing in Towns, by the way. So is this a big no for you, or is this can we make it work?" So I'm sure whatever their previous relationship was, I don't really care too much about it.
I think they should trade for Jimmy and just make it fun and just get the awkwardness going. Because I mean, really, that Jimmy Butler story really was kind of the first major uppercut in terms of public perception that Karl Anthony Towns took. Like he was, and one thing that I'm, I agree with you on the Minnesota trade, and I'd even add on the Minnesota side of the trade, I would even add that you're messing with Anthony Edwards' development to some degree. If Julius Randle comes in and doesn't accede right away, and what kind of you have this really good basketball team, and you could have gone to the finals theoretically. Now, what are they all about? Is this ownership driven? Is this part of the ownership drama? It's like, to me, it just I do not like this move at all. I love the Dante DiVincenzo contract. But there was the point I was making before I meandered was the NBA GMs rated Karl Anthony Towns the player you build around. I was like 7 or 8 years ago. Like that doesn't leave the public perception. And there's got to be a couple GMs out there that would have gone a little bit with more for Karl Anthony Towns. They would have given up more. So yeah, that's not great. Now, so dynasty wise, if it was a redraft dynasty league, where would you throw Karl Anthony Towns? I know that we're going behind the paywall a little bit with this one, but well, I guess we'll just do it. How do you feel about him in a redraft, or pardon me, in a first year draft?
So I need to tweak my ranking somewhat for this, because right now he's not like a top tier player, but a nice player to have. But I think with anticipated return to rebounds, and I mean this is a pretty all-in move. I mean, besides trading Mitchell Robinson, that's probably the only other move they can make to bring in new players now, without dramatically changing the core. Which is, I don't think that would happen for the next 2 seasons. You give this probably 2 years a run, bearing obviously huge injuries. So that steady value, probably in the I think early 20s. I don't know if he will creep up into that teens. I think he can probably get to those late teens for me, honestly. If I once I look at it and just look at the other players around him, but I think that's where he'll land. Considering I think he'll probably be a late first round value in redraft for the next 2 to 3 seasons, and when you have that performance, that gets you pretty high in dynasty.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard to predict too far out in the future. Let's go from a really big name to a name that was sort of just like, a couple summer league guys started talking about him, and then next thing you know, it's like, hey, Carlo Makovitz is a thing. And when I got onto the film, I was like, oh, damn, look what we're working with here. How high are you on him in a dynasty setting? Is he rising up the draft board, or is he still kind of a little bit on the periphery, just on the outside looking in?
He's definitely still on the periphery for me, just because, yeah, he had some moments in summer league. It also was his third year in summer league. He's been around a little bit of time. I personally don't put too much stock in summer league, let alone third year, but at least he was doing something that is better than nothing. And for me, it's more just about this opportunity where New Orleans hasn't made any Brandon Ingram trade yet as of 12:08 Central Time PM, October 4th is the date on my computer here.
Nobody's counting.
I just counted. So.
Not you, not I, not everybody.
But who are they playing at center? Daniel Tice, I'm not really trusting him at this point. They did draft Yves Misi. I like Yves Misi, but he's still raw, could use a little bit more time. So maybe Makovich just by literally process of elimination has to see some run. And there's any time that there's a player who is I think in Savvy and even like most of my dynasty leagues, he's been scooped up at this point. Some of them even had him rostered before, just as a deep league stash. So I didn't have an opportunity to really scoop him up. But if he is floating out there and you roster 250, 300 plus, and you need an last guy on the bench kind of guy, sure, scoop him up. There might be some immediate opportunity here. And once you're in that range, if you're seeing, 15, 20 minutes and producing well, which in those minutes he can produce all right. I mean, that's if you get that value for a waiver wire pickup, you take that to the bank and run. That is value. Maybe you just trade him away for something else because you don't need that immediate help. I don't know if there's a long term play here with him. I don't think there really is. But for one season, hey, I'm fine with that depth. If I'm in a 30 team and I just need something, he can give you something
I
potentially
love
if he
it.
sees those minutes.
That's a great tagline. This player can give you something. And summer league's great. I remember Kevin Knox had a great summer league, like an outstanding summer league. People were screaming from the tops of the mountains, Kevin Knox to the house. And yeah, we all know what happened there. And not to pick on Kevin Knox, he keeps working hard. You go, Kevin Knox. Andrew Nemhard. I really like this question because I mean there was a couple moments a season ago where Nemhard kind of just took over and had some big games, but really just been in the back of the rotation until the playoffs when he was quite literally the only thing that kept Indiana alive against Boston. And he played against, I mean, that defense was outstanding, and he just went out there and was a little bulldog. The way he handled the ball and then stepped into tough shots, that really stuck with me. Defensively, really, really strong. So what do you do with that? Like, obviously, Indy's got a lot of depth and issues for him. Like, are you buying into Nemhard as long-term play, or are you just kind of out because the whole situation's a little bit too messy?
This is where this is maybe a soft riser or one of those ones to monitor. I mean, I personally think Andrew Nemhard was a little over his skis with his shooting and his mid-range shooting, especially in the playoffs. I don't think that's super real, but I have to give some credence to the fact that it could be. And I know Caitlin Cooper, who writes about the Pacers, fantastic read, fantastic follow, is really thinks Nemhard is good and can be that player, that guard next to Halliburton and perform and play well. And that's where, yes, I watch a lot of basketball, but you follow these media writers and you follow people that you trust outside sometimes, and you have to give some deference to that opinion. And yeah, I think there could be something here that I'm not seeing, or I'm not seeing. So it's kind of balancing my opinion versus their opinion a little bit in terms of just what someone can produce there. But what's also interesting is that there are also reports in from Pacers that Matherin's role probably won't be as gifted or guaranteed or entitled this year. The Pacers are now a win team. They're looking to win. They traded for Siakam, made the Eastern Conference Finals with a bit of a injured bracket, but they still made that. So Matherin needs to earn his minutes now. And with that being the case, then Nemhard is the one who would seem to benefit from that. If Matherin's going to be coming off the bench more, then yeah, Nemhard has more security in minutes than I think I originally anticipated at the beginning of the offseason.
Covering Tyrese up close in Sacramento, I'm pretty clear what he needs next to him is somebody that's tough, that can take the big physical guards and get them off of his plate because he just the skinny frame, it's why he's had all these injuries. He takes so much contact. And if anybody needs to put the proverbial 15 on, it's him. And I'm sure it's extraordinarily hard for him to do that just because of how thin his frame really is. So you play so much basketball, you run up and down the court, and then just adding that muscle for certain players, it's really tough. They got to focus on it as their primary thing. And then even then it starts to take away from what makes them great, which is their lateral quickness and their first step. And Tyrese really had a great burst in his first step last season. I would pair him with Nemhard. But then that's you do have Matherin just sort of sitting there, and at times he looked really, really good. And I think it's a good problem for them to have. But those comments that you just kind of referred back to about minutes not being gifted, or that he's going to have to earn these minutes, probably just a reflection of the playoffs. and the job that Nemhard did. So I would be in a dynasty trying to get Nemhard on my team, but then there's some deficiencies and it kind of just all washes out a little bit. So it's an interesting one. I like that kind of an analysis there. Let's go to Tyus Jones. And Tyus Jones is kind of like an NBA nerds kind of a player. He is, early on in his career, it was just like, man, they do well when he's on the floor. And here's this efficient game. And then he kind of floats around a little bit. And now he's got this catbird seat as point guard of the Phoenix Suns. Like, what does this do for his dynasty value? Is this a bump up, so to speak, because you know, he's got a kind of like a stage to play on now. If he plays really well in Phoenix, like to me, that feels like it could catapult his career to the place where he could be a full-time starter and start to get a little bit more around the edges. Because right now, doesn't he just sort of plug in and he doesn't get much usage, so to speak?
This is a situation where, commenting first on the can he leverage this role into a starter? I think he tried to do that with the Washington Wizards, or I mean, he had the opportunity to, and he played really well, and yet no team was really interested. It seemed like at the price that he wanted. So I think there will always be those concerns. He'll be kind of that, probably that fair player, or fair backup point guard slash can moonlight as your starting point guard and if needed, which is fine. He can still put up stats in those minutes. But why he's a bit of a riser for me from beginning of the offseason is that situation looked really unmurky. Not unmurky, really murky. Words are hard sometimes.
Tell me about it. I know all about that.
But his situation looked really murky. Was he going to come back to Washington? Didn't seem likely. Where was he going to end up? Was he going to have to take a minimum somewhere? Would he sign with a team, just take the MLE for 1 or 2 seasons? And he took him a couple weeks, ended up landing on a minimum in Phoenix, which when we saw them sign Monte Morris for a minimum first, which seemed like that was their kind of depth point guard option. And then it seems like, oh, well, Tyus Jones is now willing to take a minimum. That's better. Let's do that. And in fact, in media, the recent media days, which I normally put very little credence in, but they said, we want to start with Tyus Jones. Okay. If they're looking at him as they want him starting, they want that passing in that lineup that had a lot of turnover issues. You mentioned that Tyus Jones is a stat nerd's darling. It's because he has one of the lowest turnover rates for a point guard and one of the highest assist to turnover ratios. Seems like a pretty good fit there. And so I think there was a little bit of dip in his value in the offseason, and it's risen back up a little bit. He might be more of kind of, I want to say stopgap dynasty point guard option because it's more a redraft style, but I think that's how I view him as. You probably will get a good 1-year secure point guard, and then it'll probably depend. Again, probably maybe be that fringe starter, solid backup option. But we've seen him do that and put up stats before, so I think you can be more confident of his production this season than we were previously on the Phoenix Suns.
I think in the Brewski 150 for my player comment, and I just updated a bunch of player comments in the Brewski 150, which Sports Ethos 360 subscribers have access to right now. Plug. He just has to exist and he gets top 100 value. Like that's, by the way, I mean, I know like if you're in a league where only top 50 per game value plays and, probably need to get a few more teammates in your league there or league mates in your league, if that's the case, but like that's 8th round value, 9th round value, if you're looking at 13, 14 rounds deep in a draft, I mean, that plays. And so if you can get him for what the going rate is for Tyus Jones, you basically have yourself a starter, that can just plug along and get you stats you need, doesn't hurt you anywhere. And that's nice. That's nice. It allows you to take big swings elsewhere. So yeah, I kind of like Tyus Jones this year. He just has to exist. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of the risers, after the break, we're going to talk about rookies that have a potential in redraft leagues this season. Okay, we're back. Wasn't that a crazy long break for everybody watching live on YouTube and in Twitter? That was just like an amazingly long Twitter commercial break. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so I'm gonna say a bunch of names, I think, and I want you to just give me which ones you think are worth to draft in a redraft league, and then you can just riff on it a little bit, and then we'll get out of here. So we have on the board for redraft leagues this season: Zach Edey, Reed Shepard, Zachary Risache, Donovan Klingen, Matas Buzelis, Stefan Castle. Okay. Those are the names that I'm not supposed to read, but I did it anyway.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. We're doing it live.
I mean, so the original question is, what rookies are we interested in redraft?
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think I'm interested in any of them.
Damn. That's stone cold, Mark.
We'll talk about Zach Edey a little bit first, but I think it's hard to see where either the minutes or will there be enough minutes for rookies or trust their permanent production enough to warrant really standard league redrafts or 12-team redrafts where you're talking about 100 to 120 players rostered confidently. I don't know if any of them are going to do that and play at that level in the first month and a half, 2 months of the season. And if they're not at that level early, I just don't care in redraft. I don't want to stash a player for that long. I don't think any of them have the upside either to be worth stashing. I don't think it's likely any of them, are in the top 50, top 75 and per game at the end of the season where, oh, maybe that's worth stashing. No, I don't see that 1 year upside either. Zach Edey, I think, is the only one because the center situation and Memphis is pretty sketchy. Jaren Jackson Jr. also had a recent, I believe it was hamstring being looked
He
like.
also had some recent interesting comments. Did those make it past your desk yet? Because I believe they were yesterday.
Which ones were those?
So on the Chris Vernon show, I don't know if it's still named that. Pardon me, allergies. He goes on the Chris Vernon show and they're talking about Edey. And like Jaren basically kind of goes out of his way to do this little bit where he's like, I'm not going to come out here and ruin his moment, was kind of the first part of it. And then the second part of it was that kind of like the moment is when somebody comes into the league and they surprise the crap out of everybody and everybody gets all buzzy about it. So that's what he's referring to here. And then he gets into this kind of like sarcastic, I'm not going to tell you that he could do this, 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 and this. And that was a reference to like he's got all these different things that he can do that people don't know apparently that he can do. So I guess to boil it down, what Jaren Jackson Jr. is saying is that there's a bunch of things that kind of go above and beyond the scope of what we think he's capable of. And that's the only thing with Zach Edey that's got me sort of interested in, I don't know where he's going to go in drafts. I don't trust the ADP data that's out there. It doesn't ever apply to any of the leagues I'm in. So it's like, does Zach Edey go at 110, 120, 130? Like to get to that level of value, he's going to have to do what Jaren Jackson is talking about, is do things that we couldn't predict. Do you think Zach Edey's capable of doing things that we can't predict?
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure in the next week or two, we're probably going to get reports of him shooting threes, even though he has very little track record of that in his college season. So we're definitely going to get reports of that, probably.
Oh, everybody's shooting threes, baby.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm joking. I do not expect Edey to shoot threes at any respectable level in the NBA and in his career, frankly. But with Edey, I think what he does provide is a relatively safe floor. If he's going to play 20 minutes, he's going to get a good amount of boards. He's going to have good field goal percentage. With his size, he'll probably get some blocks, not massive, but some. And that's enough just to propel you to lower tier value, to fringe standard league value. And then just a little bit more can get him into that top 100 range. Am I confident in that early or confident enough to draft him? Probably not for me. But, you mentioned where's his ADP going to land. There's probably going to be some manager in your league that loves Zach Edey and will take him. And I'm fine. Someone wants to take him 80 to 100 range. Go ahead. I think there's better value there personally. So
There's always
I don't.
one rookie that kind of just gets everybody because I mean we generally fade rookies at least in expert intermediate expert settings we fade rookies, and then there's one that just is like, oh crap, you did the thing. Um, I guess he's the one. Maybe Klingon, maybe Vaselis. Castle's gonna have a lot of volume, but it's gonna get ugly.
Yeah, I'll touch on Castle there first, and that's the issue with me is that I don't see him really as a great passing guard. I don't see him as a great efficiency player. So if he's going to be fed volume, okay, maybe he gets more points than I think. Maybe he gets a little bit more assists, maybe a little more boards. But I think the efficiency and turnovers are going to be bad early. And sure, maybe if you're in the head to head and that's your build, you can work with that. Work with that, like, maybe Michael Carter Williams light stat
Mm,
set, but that's not really appealing to me, and I'm not already the biggest believer in Castle anyways. Sorry,
I-
Andre. I know you're a Spurs fan. I think you all made the wrong pick there.
yeah, I love it. Give it to Andre. Okay, we're gonna get out of here, and I want folks to understand the great work that you're doing and how much we appreciate you here at Sports Ethos. I mean, the Dynasty coverage is on lockdown. What are you doing in Dynasty right now, so folks know what's going on, both inside and outside of the premium product?
So outside, have the pun intended podcast. We drop an episode at least weekly on Mondays. Sometimes we have emergency pods or midweek pods. This past week kind of kicked off a division by division Dynasty Outlook series. So first one was solo, and of course it was on the Knicks or included the Knicks. And then the next day, the Towns Randall trade dropped. So we recorded an emergency pod discussing that, and we'll have some guests on for some of the other divisions talking about some of the other teams. So very excited to go back and forth conversation with some people in the industry on that. In terms of inside the product, inside the Sports Ethos NBA Fantasy Pass subscription, we'll be doing a mock draft review. I had a Dynasty buys and sells article earlier. Into the season, we'll probably the first couple weeks in, we'll do a team by team. How are the rotations shaking up? How are younger players looking? Are there anything expected? Any skill improvements or improvements that we've seen? Any early season buy, sells, believes, don't believes, what have you. So we'll be getting all that to you within the Sports Ethos Fantasy Pass.
That's awesome, man. And outside of Dynasty coverage, Brewski 150 is released. Draft Tracker, I believe, is released. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. B150 data is powering the Draft Tracker. And that thing, I got to say, I've used a lot of tools in the last 20 years. Holy moly, last year was fun. Last year was like cutting through butter. It was that great. I'm not even that's not a sales pitch. That is just the truth. I loved every single second of it. It was so user friendly. It was not tied to the internet. It was beautiful. So check that out. Dr. A, my guys, Mike Passador's player profiles are worth the price of the draft guide alone. I could go on and on and on about this stuff. In-season tools, holy moly, the in-season tools that everybody has access to through the NBA Fantasy Pass are going to be league-winning type stuff. So take a look at sportsethos.com in the premium tab, and you can get all the details there. And that's going to do it for us. Thank you, Mark, for coming on board. I can't wait to do this more and more and more. I'm so into Dynasty right now. I hadn't really been into Dynasty prior to like the last season or two. I don't know what the hell I was thinking there. I find the trades to be fascinating. I just think the whole thing is great. So looking forward to having you more and more on the show here. And that's going to do it for us on Fantasy NBA Today, presented by Bet Online, a Sports Ethos presentation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be well.